Hello again, and welcome to week 11 to Easy Education. I'm Easy to Chris, and I'm hoping to make education easy for you. Today's kind of an interesting episode because it's week 11, and week 11 is actually the last day of quarter one. So the assignment that I was given this week had nothing to do with any reading of books that other people read, but I actually had to go through the 3 top rated essays that I wrote and then had the AI tool that I built grade for me. And really, the whole point of this week is to synthesize everything that I've learned and try and figure out what it is that I have been able to benefit from this and what do I take away from this as I move into the second quarter. Now, for context, I'm going to take a look at this really quick. The first quarter, the focus of the entire quarter was foundation and reconditioning. That's the simplicity. Like, if we're going to start something, how do you build the foundations? How do you recondition the self? And when we go into the second quarter, what I'll be focusing on is further developing my voice and how I frame things. Now, this entire education is all about being able to have better capabilities of storytelling. And, we covered 4 books this first quarter. We had James Clear's Atomic Habits. We had Albert Camus' Myth of Sisyphus. We had Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And we had George Orwell's essay, Politics in the English Language. And the first thing that I'll kind of cover as far as like synthesizing everything is James Clear's Atomic Habits and going through the 4 laws of effective habit building. And there were little tiny things throughout the weeks that I talked about that I had to change my mindset on. And one of the things that I did was I made this space a working space. So when I come in here, I recognize this is work. And it was a little bit cluttered beforehand. Now I've got a new bookshelf up. I'm actually making this a much more functional space. I've got less clutter and shenanigans on the ground. I can access things a whole lot easier in here. But more importantly, I only come in here when I want to work. When I'm wanting to work on these videos or writing my essays, or if I'm actually doing something kind of productive towards storytelling. And it helps frame my mind of what it is that I'm doing in here. And beforehand, this was just kind of a space that was mine, but I didn't really feel like I was welcome in, and I didn't understand what to do. But I made the space be what I needed the space to be. I also did things to make things easier. My camera is out all the time on a tripod, readily available, so that way I can just film if I need to film. The other side of all of this is I recognized this needs to be something that I see myself doing down the line, and how do I aspire to have that? And at some point, I needed to get off of my webcam and actually have the equipment that I'm using now, because that's what I bought it for. I can't think that one day I'm going to use these things if I'm not using these things today when they're readily available to me. So being able to have them easily accessible and bringing them out made the whole process easy for me. And I took away as many barriers of entry as I could. I have all of the tabs that I need open for Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, Squarespace, Substack. Literally everything is here. I've got ChatGPT and Claude open. I've got everything that I need for all of my storytelling and my schooling in this space. So that way when I walk into this space and I close the door, I know that I'm in here. But there's also this whole aspect of embracing the fact that you're gonna be kind of terrible at something before you're not. And the first couple of episodes that I was doing, I did not feel comfortable. This was not something that I wanted to do. And it was very, very, very uncomfortable for me to do this. And I want to. And that's kind of this weird thing of, how can I want to tell a story but not enjoy telling the story? And it's simply because I didn't have the experience. And one of the other laws that it talks about is don't try and make it so that way don't try and work out for an hour, try and work out for 2 minutes. And if you can work out for 2 minutes every single day, at some point, 2 minutes just isn't going to be enough. And maybe you'll do 10 minutes, maybe you'll do 15 minutes. Regardless, get into the rhythm, get into the habit, do it over and over and over and over again, and eventually you'll realize that that's the space that you're already occupying, so just do it the way that you want to do it at that point. And I was even thinking about this right before I hit record for tonight's episode, because I'm fine doing this now. I don't feel like I'm uncomfortable, and I don't think that there's any, magic bullet that really hit me in a way that, oh, it's working now. It's like, no, it works because I've been working on it. I'm doing it because I've been doing it. And it's such a practical application of, if you want to go out and do something, you got to go out and do it. You've got to be able to make it part of your regular routine. You have to find something that you'll find success in. So being able to read consistently, being able to write consistently, being able to edit consistently, being able to make video content consistently, I am now comfortable doing all of those things again, which I think is fantastic. And that really helped create the foundation and the reconditioning that's necessary for what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the year. So Atomic Habits, as part of the initial education with this program, is absolutely fantastic. And it's a book I had tried to read last year, just couldn't get into it, didn't have any application to apply the concepts to. But it being a part of what AI said, hey, you should put this in your education, I'm entirely thankful that was actually one of the first books that I'm reading. So then moving into Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Man, that is a powerful book. The concept of the one last freedom that all humans have is the way that we respond to any situation that we're in. It's such a good concept as far as maintaining positivity through struggles and really understanding I can choose to look at this as work, or I can choose to look at this as an opportunity to become the person that I want to become. And I've had conversations with people in my barbershop about some of the more unfortunate portions of my origin story. And they've asked me if I would ever, if I could go back, would I change things, or do I wish that things would be different to me? And honestly, I don't think that I would change anything that's happened in my life. And I've had some fairly unfortunate parts of my origin story that I won't get into here, but I do think that because there have been situations where people have shown me abuse, I have compassion. Because there have been situations where others have lacked empathy towards me, I show empathy towards others because I know what it is to be on the receiving end of it. So even though I've been on the receiving end of situations, I can look at that as an opportunity to understand what that does to others and show more compassion and show more love to others. And I think Viktor Frankl is brilliant in the simplicity of that statement. But really being able to understand the purpose of why it is that you're continuing on. Why do you do the things that you do through struggle? And I was talking with my dad a couple weeks ago about my passion for giving people aha moments. And what I mean by that is when you're struggling with something and you're going back and forth with someone, and then you're finally like, oh, that's what you mean. And you have that aha. I love being able to provide people their aha moments. That really puts value in my life. It makes me feel like I am worthwhile, and that the experiences that I have meaning because they provide context for others to be able to grow in their lives. And I do love being able to teach people, and I do love being a leader of people. I think it's one of the reasons why I own a business, and then I try and imbue any form of lessons that I've had to those who haven't had an opportunity to learn those lessons so they can learn in a little bit of an easier manner. In my prior career, when I was in people management and I had to coach and develop agents that were reporting to me, seeing somebody struggle and then just it clicks, it's a really, really rewarding feeling to know that I was a part of that. And I think of, right now, this is still the infancy of what this channel is. But I have 3-year plans for the development of what my next curriculums are going to be. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to focus on the foundations and what it is that I need to do now. So I'm pretty excited to know about what that version of me is going to be able to provide the opportunity for. And that keeps me going through these nights that I'd like to be in bed, but here I am recording because I think that this is important. So then we move to Albert Camus' Myth of Sisyphus. Before I go into this, let me just say, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning is a phenomenal book, regardless of if you're in an educational situation, and is specifically for mine, again, coming into the foundations and trying to figure out why is it that you're doing, so that way you can reiterate the habits that you're creating for yourself and understand that it's called a WIFM for me, like what's in it for me. Why am I doing this? Okay, those paired together make a whole lot of sense, to be honest. So the Myth of Sisyphus. This one's really interesting simply because I've been in dark places before. I have been in a very, very sad place in my life where I've thought about what life actually has meaning for. Like, why am I living? Why am I around? Why continue? And it was a story that really resonated with me of, soldiers who are in the midst of World War II, and they're making the decision to opt out because of just all of the utter nonsense around them. And in that despair is when they're given an opportunity to truly evaluate their life and decide what life is worth living for. And in that absurd moment and recognizing the absurdity of the world, they choose to live in spite of the gods, to die to spite the gods, to live in the absurdity, to escape the absurdity, but they recognize life. And when I really think about what is my meaning and what is my purpose here and what is the thing that I want to roll a boulder uphill for all eternity about, it's building relationships, and it's sharing experiences, and it's connecting with other people. And I really do think that is I think it's a very unfortunate thing that we're seeing a decline in post-COVID. I'm recording this on Friday, March 13th, which is exactly 6 years after COVID. And it's such a funny day for me because that was the day that my barbershop had a grand opening. We had originally opened in 2017, in late 2017, but we didn't know what we wanted the shop to be. So I traveled to Boulder, Colorado. I cut hair in a barber shop that was in a much more affluent city. I went and got my own haircut in Seattle. I went to a trip to Portland to see what barbershops there were. And I recognized that Boise was growing, but I didn't know what we were growing into. So I went to all these cities to see where people are moving from. What are they going to expect when they come to Boise? And I decided to do this entire rebranding of the shop and do a grand opening. And quite literally 2 days before our grand opening was when the WHO announced that there was a global pandemic. And spoiler alert, not a lot of people showed up to my grand opening. But, now we're 6 years after the fact, and we've seen kind of what the world has done in a post-COVID era. And you see more people have worked from home. You see kids are on iPads and they're on technology a lot more. And there are less face-to-face conversations. There's less human-to-human interactions. And I'm very fortunate for owning a barbershop because I get to have human interactions with people on a daily basis. And I get to be in one of the bluest cities in the reddest state in the country. So I get a lot of diversity that comes into my shop. And I get to have a lot of really fascinating conversations. Anywhere from people who disagree with the things that had happened in Minnesota to a client whose entire family is currently living in Tehran, and he is an Iranian immigrant working in America. With everything that's going on in America right now and across the world. So it's really a unique place and a unique career where I get to have genuine human connections with people. And I think that is one of the things that I strive to have the most in life is genuine connections with other people. And when I got to my place of despair, I had to figure out what it is that I actually wanted to do that was worth living for. And the way that I came into cutting hair is actually kind of a weird story because I had never gone to barbershops before. I had never gone to salons regularly. I honestly only got my hair cut like twice a year, and it was if I needed to get cleaned up to go in for an interview because I was in line for a promotion, or if the girl that I was dating said that I looked shaggy, that was a quick fix. So when I made a decision that I didn't want to wake up, and I started thinking about what are reasons that would make me wake up, I had to reverse engineer a career for myself. And it was in a way where I said, okay, this is what I don't want to do. This is what I don't want to do. I hate doing this. I don't want to do that. What are the things that I can define as success? I want to be on my feet and be active all day. I want to be able to work with my hands and feel like I've actually accomplished something physically. But I want to build real relationships with people. And that was one of the key success indicators for me in what career it is that I wanted to do. And through all of that, I found cutting hair, which, it's not exactly the most direct path to success by a lot of people, but for the way that I defined success, it was exactly what I needed it to be. And going through the myth of Sisyphus, realizing that in your darkest spaces, in these absolute what is life worth living for moments, you actually think about it and you're introspective enough where you can recognize where that's at. And for me, again, it's building relationships with people. And I do think that we're at a risk with how people are using AI to replace human interaction, replace the workload that's required out of them to be able to feel accomplished and have some kind of purpose and meaning in life. Being able to put myself out there in a human way and just explain why this tool needs to be used in a better way so that way you can have more of your humanity about you, I think is crucially important. So maybe not necessarily a book for everybody. It certainly resonated with me with my history. So the last book that I covered for the first quarter was the essay of George Orwell's Politics in the English Language. And reading that book right as everything is happening in Iran, it's kind of interesting watching the news. Because the whole point of this book is if you can say something in less words, say it in less words. If you can use less syllables, use less syllables. Learn the English language in a way where you speak what you mean and you mean what you say and others can understand it. Don't try to speak eloquently and in a manner where you sound more educated and more verbose than what it is that is required out of you, because all that does is makes other people think that you're more important than you are, and it is a deceptive tactic to be able to trick others into thinking that you're more important than you actually are. And this is one of the ways that politicians will justify terrible actions, is because we think that they're educated enough and we think that they're smarter than us and they're the right people for those jobs, and then they keep getting elected to be able to do more terrible things. And you can talk about how communities are displaced, and those words just sound like a normal part of the conversation. It's a displaced community that is now migrating into a new land. Yeah, because they were bombed out of their home and they had to move to a strange place. And that's kind of the thing, is if you say what you mean, then you understand what it is that I'm talking about. And if I try to sugarcoat the gory details for you just so you like what it is that I say, what's the value in you saying it? And I really don't want to turn this podcast series into a political podcast, but it's fascinating to me, the timing of things. And being able to have read this book right before where the world is watching events unfold, it gives really, really interesting context to how I see the news speak to people. And, I don't want to sound left-wing or right-wing or anything, because at the end of the day, when I was doing this podcast with my dad, the prior podcast, I was listening to about 4 hours of news reporting a day, and I would listen to the Washington Post and the New York Times every morning, their podcasts, just to get an idea of what, left-wing media was saying. And then I would listen to the BBC, because I think it's important to hear what the world is talking about that your local media doesn't talk to you about. I listened to Al Jazeera America, because I think that was a really, really important news agency that has a very unique perspective that doesn't necessarily come from American values and has very, very unique perspective on the world. And then I'd listen to the Canadian Broadcasting Company, CBC, because our upstairs neighbors are pretty interested in what it is that their downstairs neighbors are doing. They've got a very vested interest in it. And then after all of that, I would listen to a couple of Joe Rogan podcasts and similar, because I wanted to understand what the right was saying about all of these things. So, that's an overwhelming amount of news. Believe me, listening to 3 to 4 hours of news podcasts a day, that's my sports feed. I'm interested in it, but I don't think that that's for everybody. But I do think that in order to get fair and balanced information, to be able to make your own decisions and have your own critical thought, you need to both hear what it is that both sides are saying and recognize how both sides are deceptive to the people that listen to them. Again, I don't want to make this entire thing a political podcast. This is all about education. But part of critical thought is recognizing when you are a part of groups think and when you're part of an echo chamber, and being able to recognize that and finding ways to be able to get yourself out of it. I think the punk rock community is a really great place that I was able to be raised in. It really did teach me a lot about speak your mind, speak your voice. But unfortunately, in my mind, or in my experience rather, I have found that the punk rock community has become a large groupthink. And, if you fall in line with what everyone says, then that's great. You're punk rock. But punk rock taught me to be an individual, and I don't always agree with them. And sometimes I find myself in the middle. Sometimes I find myself on the opposite side of the aisle. Sometimes I hate the opposite of the side of the aisle with them. And that's the whole point of being an independent, is being able to look at things critically and make a decision for myself. I really do worry that when people are using AI and AI is providing an aggregate of answers because it's just getting an aggregate out of the internet, then we are going to become an aggregate of society. And I really believe that we have a tool that can make us outliers. And that is what my goal is to become an outlier, so that way I can teach other people how to be an outlier. So all of this is to say, what did I take away from this first quarter? Well, clearly I have a little bit more confidence in the way that I speak. I'm a lot more confident in being able to stand in this room, and the only thing that I'm self-conscious about is the fact that I talk with my hands a lot, and that's okay. It doesn't bother me, because at the end of the day, I can speak my message a lot more clearly to a much better camera setup than how I started. And I think that these 4 books combined really did help build the foundations and helped recondition for, the 11th episode and what I'll be doing moving forward, which I'm very excited for what the rest of the year is going to bring. So how could you guys do this? How is it that you guys would be able to create your own curriculum and understand how to build your own foundations? What are the things that are most important to you? I would genuinely love to hear some of your questions, because next week is actually my week off. I gave myself a spring break and I'm kind of excited about it because I have to write a wedding. So being able to spend a week actually focusing on writing a wedding is going to be stellar. I'm really excited about it. But leave a comment down below. That would really, really help me give something to talk about next week when I'll still be doing an update. Next week, I probably have a couple of ideas. I'm going to be really honest. All of these books have been incredibly heavy, and they're very insightful. They're very great for learning, but I need a little bit of a break. So I'm definitely restarting Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I'm going through my second read through of that before the 8th book comes out in May. And for anyone who hasn't read Dungeon Crawler Carl, read Dungeon Crawler Carl. It's really good. It's really, really, really good. And it's the most absurd story in the world, but it is, oh my gosh, it is ridiculousness that if you like horror, if you like sci-fi, if you like absurdity, if you like fantasy, if you want to have storytelling that's so good you cry, Dungeon Crawler Carl, it's fantastic. But another thing that I'm going to be doing this week is I am slowly transitioning away from ChatGPT towards Claude. And I'm going to be teaching myself a little bit more on how to use Claude. I really hope to be able to start vibe coding and using Claude Code. And at some point, I want to figure out how to do the co-work space and be able to create agents that can potentially do some of the not the writing for me, not the editing for me, but some of the other administrative stuff. So that way I might be able to get like some social media posts associated with this and have that all automated. So that way I'm not spending all of my free time on this. But since I'm not on social media, there are some other places that you could follow, like, subscribe, whatever it is that you want to do to show me some support. I appreciate it all the same. I really, really do. I am on Spotify. It's on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Podcasts. Easy Education is also available on YouTube. If you want to read all of the essays that I'm putting out there, you can find them on my Substack, which is Easy to Chris, or you can find both the written essays as well as the video content on my website, easytochris.com. So until next week, I appreciate you guys sticking around with me for this first quarter, but until then, be well.